What's going on, Badger Nation? Welcome to the PPC Den podcast, the world's first and longest running show all about how to make your Amazon PPC life a little bit easier and a little bit more profitable. Today, we have some actions to help make your Amazon life a little bit easier, a little bit more profitable, because I'm talking to Elizabeth Greene, my dear friend from Jungler, and we're going to be talking about how to really evaluate and think about your vCPM campaigns. There's a new feature inside bulk files where you can actually see your click-based sales and your view-based sales, which we'll talk about in this episode. Let's jump in. Welcome back to the show, Elizabeth. It's so good to have you here, radiating from the Sunshine State there in Florida.
It is a beautiful day outside. It's warm. It's going to get crazy hot this summer, but such is life.
Well, thanks for hanging out inside, away from the sun, in the AC, to talk about Amazon advertising with us.
I'm excited. I always love our discussions. They're always a lot of fun.
Thanks for saying that. And how are things going at Jungler? You know, I talked to a lot of agencies. 2024 was a challenging year, is the general consensus that I pick up. How's it been going for you? Would you say that's generally true? Like, a lot of clients are feeling a pinch. They're seeking more profitability. Maybe they're cutting back on some marketing expenses. Would you say that's generally true for you as well?
Yeah, I would say that's generally true. The end of 2024 was harder, but 2025 has been amazing. But I think that's more for personal reasons than it was really. I think maybe there was some market dynamics in there as well. For context, personal reasons were like business personal, not. I'm really blessed to have like my personal life on lock. I keep getting worried saying that, like, so the shoe's gonna fall, but I was like, I've always had that figured out, regardless of as crazy and whatever as it is. Like, it's fantastic. Like, so happy. Could live like this for the rest of my life.
Yeah, you have a wonderful family.
Yep.
As I've met them, they're absolutely great. I can sense the joy that you have, for sure.
I think that's one thing I'm proud about. All my kids have a very cheerful disposition.
Do you have a cheerful disposition?
I do. I tend to, I'm very optimistic, borderline delusional. But honestly, that's just served me really well, because there's some times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. And obviously, you know, everybody, you get the panic and you get the worry and you get the anxiety. But I'm always kind of like, it always just kind of works out. And it does. And so I just kind of like rely on that delusion and somehow get through it.
You know, one of the most successful entrepreneurs I know, he's in the eCommerce universe, Anton Crowley. He's not in the Amazon universe, but he had we played volleyball together here in Austin. He's since moved away, but he had a quote in his apartment that said, "Operate as if success were inevitable." Meaning, like, no one does anything in the world of, you know, entrepreneurship unless they believe that it will work out. So you have to be somewhat delusional. You have to believe more than anyone else that it's possible, for sure.
I agree. And I think the longer I do life and business in life, I realize like life is just a continuous game of pros and cons. And you just find a way to play the pros and cons in a way that is true to yourself and what you want out of life. Because what I want out of life is not what everybody, there are people who look at my life and like, oh my gosh, that's boring. And there's some other people who probably look at it and be like, oh, that sounds amazing. And so I just continue to try and be like, this is what I want to do. And you know what? Thankfully, we've been successful doing that. So,
amen. You know what? You mentioned pros and cons. And today, we're going to be talking about pros and cons of vCPM campaigns. vCPM, I like vCPM. Got a little Italian in there, which stands for views per 1,000 impressions. The milli, I guess that's maybe more Latin. I'm not 100% sure, but it's like the metric system. The millimeter, 1,000, a thousandth of a meter. So this is 1,000 impressions. CPM. I would say, you know, CPC, cost per click advertising. It's the darling. It's the belle of the ball. Who shows up late to the ball with a tattered dress is vCPM. It's the stepsister of CPC. Now, vCPM, I think this is such a great topic because today, in 2025, I still talk to people that are looking at their advertising campaigns and they say, look how good my vCPM campaigns are converting. So it bears repeating. So if you are looking at your vCPM campaigns and you think that, wow, look how good they're converting, or if you are unsure or skittish to use vCPM because you know the truth about vCPM, this episode will help. Now, Elizabeth, for the people out there that have like a 7% ACoS on their vCPM campaigns, can you please break down why what they think is a 7% ACoS is actually not a 7% ACoS as they know it? Can you please break down click attribution versus view and click attribution?
Yes,
And do it
that
softly because you might break some hearts right now.
I know. So it depends on how much shock value I want when I'm talking about this.
Maximum.
Because maximum shock value would say the sales within ad console are wrong or Amazon's lying to you. And that's the general sentiment of people who find out the truth that we're gonna drop on you about vCPM. And so if I'm trying to soften that or, read the room, right? So if you want a shock value, like, all right, you need to pay attention, be careful, error, warning signs. I'll say something that's that late or, maybe that's sudden. But
Yes.
if I'm in a room where I'm like, all right, let's talk about nuance, right? I would say it's not necessarily that it's incorrect in the way that Amazon is reporting it.
Right.
It's a different way of reporting sales.
Correct.
Now, the problem with the different way of reporting sales is, as you said, it's not that click attribution that we all are used to. So it's reported differently than the rest of your, cost per click campaigns, but everybody's evaluating them as if they are the same, and they're not. So
Everything is cost per click. Everything is cost per click. Somebody clicks, you pay when they click. 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 vCPM, you do not pay when they click. Henceforth, the conversions that are reported are not, they don't necessarily need to happen if somebody clicks on it. Just simply viewing it.
yeah, so there's a difference in how you pay for them, and there's also a difference in how the sales are reported. So the difference in how you pay, as you said, like pay-per-click, I think everybody knows that, is, all right, somebody clicks on your ad, you then pay for it. And in a vCPM model, you still bid on it, but you're not bidding on, hey, I'm going to pay X amount when somebody clicks. You're saying, hey, I'm willing to pay X amount for every 1,000 viewable impressions. And I think we'll define what viewable is, because that will start to set the stage for like, oh, maybe there's not as much interactions with my ads. But I do want to preface all of this conversation by saying, before we hit record, I was like, my goal is not to, if you are running vCPN and you think it's amazing, go, oh my gosh, great, now let me just go pause everything. Or if you're so scared to run it, like hearing a confirmation of what we're saying, like, oh my gosh, this sounds terrible. My goal would be, there is a time and a place for a vCPM, which I think is something we'll probably talk about, or at least some tests that can be run. But I would say if you are not evaluating them correctly, you are going to be optimizing it correctly. So our goal here is to like pull back the curtain. This is how you evaluate it. This is how you can look at everything, no hidden secrets, and get the most out of this ad type, or at least make sure you're not wasting money.
Well said. Yes. So just really, it's just understanding when you open up advertising.amazon.com, you go to your campaigns and you're looking at your campaigns, do know that the sales column, that the ACoS column includes clicks and views based like spend and for vCPM campaigns as well as sales. So the sales that you look at and the ACoS that you look at includes viewable attributed sales, meaning nobody necessarily clicked on it, but they had a viewable impression and then they ended up purchasing, and that sale, which would not be attributed to sponsored products, meaning if somebody looks at your sponsored product ad, they do not click on it and then they convert, it does not go back to the sponsored product CPC based campaigns, but in vCPM campaigns, it does. So that's like one concept. I sometimes think of it as like click-through sales and view through sales. So meaning, did the sale happen through a click or did the sale happen through a view? And with vCPM campaigns, the sales figure that you look at inside at Amazon advertising, we'll talk about where to get it, your click-based sales. But when you're looking at the default interface, the vCPM campaigns includes view through sales, meaning they didn't click on it, but they viewed it. Now, whether that's good or bad depends on a variety of factors, but it's just something to know. So hopefully, as we move forward in 2025, we just are able to view this properly, meaning a sale in a vCPM campaign is not the same as a sale in a sponsored product CPC-based campaign. Like it should be viewed differently.
I think that's a great way of putting it. And I think it's also important to define here what Amazon constitutes as a viewable impression.
Please.
Because this is how you also define what you're paying for. So Amazon's saying, like, if you don't meet these criteria, we're not going to charge you for an impression. But if you do at least meet this criteria, and then you rack up 1,000 of these, this is what we're going to charge you. So a viewable impression means that 50% of your ad, which we all know how small sponsored display ads can be, needs to be in the viewpoint of the shopper. So it could be like bottom right corner, and only 50% of the ad needs to be visible for 1 second. 1 Mississippi. That's it. So, and again, I'm not saying like this is the correct way, the accepted way for vCPM models to work, because I think there's a lot of things that come to the Amazon ads platform that the Amazon community is like, oh, this is super new. Like vCPM has been around for a very long time in most like online ad platforms, and this is the way in which you measure it. So again, I'm not saying like this is wrong, but to your point, these need to be evaluated completely differently than you do with your CPC campaigns. Because again, if you think of it, one tiny little part of the screen viewable, 1 Mississippi, and then you scroll, well, was there a real interaction with that ad? Did that actually lead to an order? Now, I'm not saying that it won't.
Of course.
You have video ads available in sponsored display ads. You can have images. Like there are ways to capture attention, and maybe they did see the ad and then, go on to browse and, oh yeah, I saw that product and that was interesting, and then go on to, purchase it. So it can drive real sales, but there's this uncertainty of if that viewable impression was really the thing that drove them to purchase or not.
Hey y'all, I hope you're enjoying this episode. I just wanted to jump in really quick and add something here. It's a quick note for Ad Badger customers. I know that a lot of Ad Badger customers listen to this show. I just want you all to know that Ad Badger customers get free AMC instance creation. So please hit us up. And if you need some help with evaluating sponsored display inside AMC, we can do that for you as well. Just a quick plug for Ad Badger customers. Back to the show. It's similar to I call this let's call this PPC hesitation, where it's just you want to people are a little hesitant to do it. Similar to you rank in a top spot for your organic listing and you have a sponsored product ad right above it. There's PPC hesitation. Did I need to bid on the sponsored product ad? Because I'm right there in organic. So it's well, what if I didn't have that? Or branded campaigns. It's someone's searching my brand. They see they want to come to me anyway. Do I really need the ad there? In a similar vein, it's okay, they just viewed it. Would they have purchased anyway? So it's this whole realm of was it worth it type thing that happens with PPC campaigns, which I would say has come up a lot throughout my career, but a lot more in the last 12 months, where it's just are there places to trim? And some of it is would they have converted it anyway, organically or by some other way that I need to pay for? So it's this whole world. Now, it's not good, it's not bad. It's just something to be aware of when you're looking at your ad console and you're trying to evaluate your vCPM campaigns. Let's tease this out, because in the default ad console, you cannot see your vCPM click-based sales and your click-based ACoS. So again, what does that mean? That means sales that went through a click on your vCPM campaigns, as opposed to sales that went through a view or a click. And it's worth noting, inside all of these examples that we're about to look at, you have the view and click sales, you have the click sales. There's no actual like view only sales, like all the sales that just came through a view. So if you wanted that information, how many sales came directly through a view, you would have to do some arithmetic to subtract the views and clicks and then subtract click only. So there are ways to understand this. So anyone running vCPM needs to do one of these options, which we're about to talk about here.
Yes, and I think I'm really glad that there is a more manual option to be able to get this information, because the other places where you can get it would be like the API or AMC, which both of those require really heavy setups. AMC you can only get if you're running DSP or if you're going through a provider who does have access to AMC, because that's available if you're just running sponsored ads now. There's pretty large barriers to entry for these things. And we know, because we've gone through the barriers to get access to them, even as an agency, part of Partner Network, it's a pain, right? It's difficult. It's not easily accessible. You need to know how to write SQL. It's a whole thing. But it's not going to cut it really for Ad Console, because we're saying you need to evaluate these differently, but you need to know both. Or I would recommend, definitely, if you are going to run this ad type, you want to know your click attributed sales and your view attributed sales, and make sure that you're evaluating those too. So there's 2 additional reports that you can download manually. Now, one of them is only going to give you the data on a campaign level. So to be honest, I probably wouldn't even bother with this report. I do believe it's a sponsor display campaign. I believe it's the campaign report that I can give it to you. But again, it's on a campaign level. So is that really, if you have multiple targets in these campaigns, it's probably not going to be worth doing it. But the other one that you can download is a bulk file. And honestly, the only reason I know that this is available is because we use bulk files for evaluation, because it's basically a download of your entire account. And so when I was going through my evaluation of the sponsored display ads, I was looking at it and I'm like, why is this brand spending thousands of dollars on a target, over a 30-day period, and the target has like a 200-300% ACoS? Okay, I know that these things happens, but this makes no sense to me. And I would have thought that anyone, because it wasn't like the rest of the account was significantly mismanaged. And so then I was like, oh, this is strange. And then I went and checked in Ad Console, and in Ad Console, the target was getting a 12% ACoS. And so they were optimizing based off of, which again, we've already talked, is the view and click attributed sales. So the click attributed sales, so again, only shoppers who actually clicked onto that ad and then went on to purchase, that was significantly lower than what was being reported as view and click attribution. So they're optimizing, thinking there's, the sales on it looked fantastic. The ACoS was why would you not spend more on it? But then when evaluating the click attribute, so that's the only reason I know that bulk files had that. And then later on, which I do really appreciate, the bulk file team actually added. So now if you download a bulk file and you look at the sponsor display tab, you actually see 2 ACoS columns and 2 different. I know there's ACoS. I know there's orders and units. I'm trying to think, there was a couple other data points in there as well. But under the one ACoS column, you'll see it'll say ACoS and it'll say view and click. And so you can actually evaluate, okay, so what's my click attributed sales and then what's my view attributed sales? And oftentimes, unfortunately, if you've been continuously optimizing these and probably pushing ads, because again, fantastic ACoS, fantastic sales, why would I not spend more? Most likely you're pushing on something, and oftentimes the delta between what the campaign manager reported ACoS is, or the view and click ACoS is, versus what the click attributed ACoS is quite significant.
Of course. So yeah, so the thing to do here is, obviously, if you've only evaluated your vCPM campaigns using the default Ad Console from Amazon, go download a bulk file. You will see sales, views and clicks, orders, views and clicks, units, ACoS, ROAS, views and clicks. And then nearby, you'll also see sales, orders, units, so on and so forth, ACoS, and that is of course the click-based. So it's not labeled, like the views and clicks are labeled. The other one, which is just click-based, is not labeled. So you can do some math, you can play with your columns, but yes, this will give you the view that is more congruent with the way that we think about campaigns, which is, okay, I can evaluate my sponsored products based on click-based sales, and I can evaluate my vCPM campaigns based off click-based sales. However, this brings up the next question, which is, should you evaluate them in the same way? Meaning, there are different reasons you would want to run a vCPM campaign as opposed to a CPC-based campaign. So you want to be able to have the ability to evaluate them the same way, but at the same time, there's even more nuance to this. Meaning, should you evaluate them the same way? Should you evaluate a vCPM campaign in the same way? And it sort of brings up the question, which is like pros and cons of running vCPM campaigns. Should you run them? Should you not run them? I want to start by just talking about the scope of vCPM campaigns. Elizabeth, if you were to take all of your clients and then evaluate what percentage of ad spend is vCPM campaign, what would you approximate that figure to be?
Probably just a couple percentage points, to be honest.
Single digit?
Yeah, definitely single digits, because sponsored display ads, just by nature, due to inventory and other, performance metrics and things, don't really make up a large percentage of the ad budgets. Like, I would say that probably always in single digits, to be honest. And I hear a lot from sellers, like, regardless of if it's vCPM or otherwise, like, oh, I can never get sponsored display to work for me. I would say, one, there's a ton of options as far as targeting. So I would definitely test for sure, because I wouldn't just run like one sponsored display ad and say like, oh, that didn't work. But I digress. So, I mean, but again, the out of inventory, the conversion rates on them, everything about, like, we don't typically run a lot of these types of ads, even though we are running them in like all accounts. And then because we haven't found vCPM, again, because we're not fooled by what's in ad console, we haven't always found that it works phenomenally across all brands. And so that's even a smaller sliver of our overall sponsored display ad budgets.
What's your insight into that? Why do you feel like those campaigns don't do as well as normal campaigns?
I think it probably it goes down to the fact that you're paying for views. And then, like, in a typical CPC campaign, we're not paying for impressions. So I can generate a ton of impressions, but say my click-through rate is lower, or maybe my conversion rates is a little bit lower. I can moderate that. Like, if I have a ton of impressions and a really low click-through rate, that's not going to hurt me on a CPC campaign, versus a sponsored display campaign. Those tend to have lower click-through rates. And so I think the delta between impressions and, the actual click-throughs just doesn't always stack up to being profitable. Now, we're definitely running them profitably in some of our accounts. And there is a benefit we have found in, like, if you wanted to generate more impressions, you tend to get a little bit more love on these campaigns, again, because you're paying for the impressions. So you want to evaluate these differently. But I would say I wouldn't discount running them. Now, what I would say is that if you have tested them and you haven't seen it perform well, I don't think you're necessarily going to be, cutting off a huge increase in the account if you weren't going to run vCPM. And so I'd also say, if you're not comfortable evaluating these using bulk files, if you don't have a good workflow to evaluate them, and all you're doing, like, you're still managing everything through ad console, I probably would avoid vCPM, which is also available in sponsored brand ads, by the way, as well. Just because, again, you won't have the data to be able to evaluate them correctly. But if you're comfortable doing it and you do have the data, I do think it's worth testing for some products.
Here's the way that I think about vCPM. I think of a product going on Shark Tank, and like nobody clicked to Like no one's clicking to like, I want this pitch. I mean, granted, they might be if they're like picking a clip from YouTube, but if they're just sitting down and watching Shark Tank, they're not actively searching for the thing. However, every time I work with someone who's been on Shark Tank, their account just feels like it's in easy mode because they've had such tremendously good view-based exposure higher up in the funnel. So people will learn about them and be intrigued by what they have to offer. And a lot of times with being on Shark Tank, it's usually a product that is novel or like they invented it. So it actually benefits them to have this like view-based introduction to their product, which will later lead to somebody searching for their product in some way. So that's how I like to think about its view. And then the question I ask is like, would a company benefit by doing that? And it's like, imagine any product. What would you say in a Shark Tank pitch to like intrigue people to like trickle down? And sometimes the answer is like, hopefully it's not. Well, my product is just a Me Too product. Like I have nothing novel to say about it. It's like, you're going to have a bad time no matter what on Amazon. But it's like, if you can have some kind of interesting, unique thing at the top of the funnel, that can trickle down to increased engagement further down the funnel. So it's like, can a company benefit from that? Now, even if that is true, you can benefit from top of the funnel. So like vCPM, you can sometimes do different targeting types, and it's your audience based, and you're doing these cool things to target people that are, maybe not searching for you yet. Even if you can do that, and it is true that you can benefit from downstream sales with a great vCPM top of funnel ad, why still wouldn't you want it to be CPC up top? Like, why still wouldn't you want it to be CPC? And the thing where vCPM works the best, I have found, is when brands really spend a lot of time thinking about what should that first introduction be? Can we craft something that is a scroll stopper, meaning like it interrupts what people are currently doing, and they're like, oh, that's interesting. Let me go check this out. So there's some math. I'm going to say it slowly. So like when your CTR, meaning like the way that people engage with a view-based ad, when that CTR is so good, you are not paying cost per click. So you actually end up saving money. So here's some quick math. If your CTR is so good, if your CPC is $1 and your vCPM is $5, then vCPM becomes cheaper when your click-through rate is over 0.5. Because if you pay $5 per 1,000 views, that ends up being $0.005 per view versus you would have been paying 50 cents per click. So it's like you actually end up getting cheaper interactions with a highly clickable vCPM campaign. This is a common thing that people do on social ads, like meta ads, leaning into vCPM. Hey, I'm going to serve a really engaging scroll stopper, top of funnel, to a big audience. Lots of people will engage with it, and then I'm going to retarget them. Or then I know that they'll be intrigued and they'll go to Google and search me. So like having that whole loop that I just mentioned about like Shark Tank style in like views can lead to downstream benefit. And that's like where I've seen vCPM do really well. And it's not for everybody. So it's like, yes, if you are selling this sort of Me Too product, and hopefully you're not, hopefully you have some really great differentiation that is meaningful to people at top of funnel, then yes, vCPM can do great because that awareness will eventually lead to downstream sales, which you can sort of suss out with view-based sales, click-based sales, punch into AMC, see the difference between these campaigns. So that's my general take on where vCPM can work well and not work well.
Yeah, no, I like it. And I think there's a bit of an old school, which Amazon is definitely like their internal team. They are, I don't know, I'm sure you interact with like the internal ads team, and you'll sort of hear what it is that they're trying to push, and sort of the, I don't want to say narrative they're putting out, but essentially in some ways that's true, is like Amazon has always been, because it is a very conversion focused platform. Like people go to purchase.
Right.
And so a lot of times, and also just sort of the nature of the first movers of sellers who are getting into Amazon, it was very much, scrappy, figure it out, survival of the fittest, like, which I love. I think the platform and the selling community is amazing. But one of the things, it's like every single dollar must convert today. If this click does not convert,
Direct response. I need an
direct
action.
response, we need an action. And while that's definitely a way to manage ads and can work in certain campaigns with certain goals, like there are certain campaigns and goals that you want to be optimizing for that. But there's a lot larger brands that are coming into this space that have this very long-term mentality of brand growth and top of funnel. And to be honest, there is a segment of the seller community still that hears brand awareness and thinks equals wasted ad spend.
Right. And it might for them.
For them, it might. And I would say I am really excited about the ways that Amazon is giving us insights into these things. So like the bulk file team giving us insights, AMC coming out, like there's a real push from Amazon to help advertisers understand better those funnels that do work. Because like there's a lot of things, unfortunately, a lot of the seller community, sometimes like you'll hear people go off of gut instinct. Like, oh, I feel like top of search across my entire account works best, so therefore I need top of search in every single campaign. Or I feel like I don't do as much on sales on the weekends, so therefore maybe let me just shut my campaigns off. And those scenarios may be very possible, but I don't like optimizing off gut feelings. I much prefer data. And so again, if you're going to use this campaign, you definitely want to make sure that you're evaluating all the data possible. And then if you do have access to things like AMC, you can get things like path to purchase. So understanding, okay, so when they interact with the sponsored display ad and then maybe they interact with the other ads, like do segments of the market who interact with the vCPM campaign and then maybe even interact with other campaigns, are they more likely to convert because they saw that original ad? You can find that information out. It's just, again, there's more barriers to entry there. So that does make it a little bit difficult for like an average seller. If you have like an agency or somebody, you can get access to AMC. I believe there's softwares that also allow you to do that as well. Then you can have much more insights and then really evaluate, again, based on data, does it make sense to make vCPM a part of my advertising strategy?
And I'll say that even in the times where vCPM does work well, I still see it 5% or less of most budgets. So it does have a place. And I would say it's for the right brand where you do benefit from top of funnel awareness. And you can, of course, measure that. And you can, and a lot of times brands know. Like, I think there's a lot of, like you mentioned, there's a lot of like enterprisey focused things on Amazon. Like, if you go to an Amazon event, like Unboxed, it's very enterprisey focused. Like, we're building things that a Samsung would benefit from a lot. Like a typical Amazon seller is not running a Super Bowl ad, but like
Right.
Samsung is. So it's like that kind of company that does benefit from awareness can also benefit from awareness on Amazon. Now, it doesn't need to be Amazon size. There's lots of smart marketers at any market size to be able to, have a creative narrative. And the whole point of this episode, like the thing to do is to go into a bulk file and actually see the difference. Because
Yeah.
I would say where it works the least is when you don't have that great funnel thinking and you are only looking at the ad console and you are only
Yeah.
evaluating vCPM campaigns based off their views and clicks, and you weigh them the same way as your sponsored products, ACoS. So as long as you go into it and you typically have like a conversion in your head, which is like, okay, if I'm trying to get a 35% ACoS on my sponsored products, how does that change my my vCPM ACoS? Like, if I want a 35% on my click-based sales, maybe I'll go up to 75% on my vCPM campaigns, because like that is the way that I value it as half as much. And I would say that kind of thinking is appropriate. Some kind of
Right.
like discount for how you think about these things.
No, and I think that's a fantastic call out because, like you were saying, if you are very conversion direct response focused, and you're like, hey, every ad dollar must come back to me immediately, and then yet you're evaluating vCPM inside your ad console, which again, that data is not going to be what's immediately coming back to you. it is view and clicks. And so that is the way in which you are running your entire ad account, and you don't, again, have insights to the full funnel and all of that, then you do want to be evaluating off of what the click attributed ACoS is, and then just make sure, like, I've seen brands where, because they were just looking at them in ad console, like one brand, they had very large budgets, a couple $100,000. So a $20,000 segment of that is significant, but smaller. I mean, that's more than some people's ad budget entirely. But over like the course of maybe it was a month or so, when I told them about this evaluation, they spent $20,000 on vCPM thinking it was, 10% ACoS. And then in reality, when evaluating it, through click attribution, it was 400% ACoS, which is an insane difference. And again, very large budgets. So I think our goal here is just like, let's pull back the curtain on how do you evaluate these through multiple lenses and just make sure that your ad dollars are working for you. Because they might be. And in that case, fantastic. Continue on. But if you find that they're not, well, then there's definitely adjustments that need to be made.
Well said. Elizabeth, let people know where they can find you if they want to continue this conversation with you.
Absolutely. I would love to continue the conversation. If you are running an ad account and want a second opinion, feel free to reach out to us on our website, which is jungler.com, jungler.com. Obviously, we can do a free audit for you. My goal of that is for you to be like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. Yes, please do it for me. But there's no hold, no hard sells, no obligations. I'd be more than happy to talk.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for coming back on the show. And everyone else, I'll see you next time on the PPC Den podcast.
I've launched campaigns and picked keywords. I've got my bits, set placements too. And bad mistakes.